It was a night polished by autumn's first chill, the kind of evening where Boston's elite sought refuge beneath vaulted ceilings, velvet curtains, and the soft amber glow of chandeliers. The Sterling Chess Club stood proud among them, a place where power was whispered over chessboards and reputations were cemented with the movement of carved pieces. It wasn't just a game here, it was an unspoken language of intellect, wealth, and dominance. Inside, the murmur of conversation blended with the gentle clink of fine glasses, and the subtle rustle of expensive suits shifting in leather chairs. Nathan Hale was at the center of it all. 27 years old, son of industrial tycoon Richard Hale, Nathan wasn't just known for his family's fortune. He was known for his mind, razor-sharp, ruthless, and brilliant at chess. 8-time club champion. The man who, as the members joked, could checkmate you before you'd even settled into your chair. With dark hair perfectly swept back, and eyes that missed nothing, he played with a detached confidence that both intimidated and intrigued. Tonight, as usual, he had drawn a small crowd, watching with admiration as he dismantled an opponent's strategy piece by piece. A soft ripple moved through the room as the front doors creaked open. Heads turned, conversations paused. Mid-sentence, a figure appeared who clearly didn't belong. She pushed a battered cleaning cart that squeaked faintly with each step. Emily Small, quiet, her brown hair escaping the loose knot at the back of her neck, her sneakers worn, her uniform faded. There was no shine to her shoes, no designer label to her clothes. Just a girl with tired eyes and quiet determination, trying to do her job in a place that didn't even notice her existence. Or so they thought. She wasn't supposed to be there yet. The cleaning crew came after midnight, when the members had left, and the room was filled only with the scent of old books, cigars, and spilled whiskey. But tonight, she had come early, not by choice. She'd promised her mother she'd get home before 1. Her mother needed her more than ever these days. "Can I help you?" asked the club's receptionist, the words edged with irritation. Emily didn't respond at first. Her eyes had fallen on the chessboard in front of Nathan, as if the pieces called to her from some forgotten place. She stood still, as if listening to a song no one else could hear. The room held its breath, caught off guard by the strange pause. In rhythm, Nathan looked up from his bourbon glass, one eyebrow raised. "Are you lost?" His voice was smooth, amused. The type of tone a man uses when he believes he already understands the ending of the story. Emily didn't answer. She stepped forward, gaze fixed on the board. It wasn't arrogance or defiance. It was focus. The kind that can't be faked. The kind that comes from knowing something deeply, like the smell of your childhood home or the first notes of a song you loved long ago. "You play?" Nathan asked, setting down his glass. He smiled, but there was challenge beneath it. A challenge he didn't even think she would recognize. Emily blinked once, then nodded. "I used to," she said softly. A few chuckles rose from the spectators. The idea of the cleaning girl, in her scuffed sneakers and fraying sleeves, challenging Nathan Hale, was too much for them. Some shook their heads, already turning back to their conversations, thinking the moment would pass. But Nathan leaned back, studying her. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the empty chair opposite him. "Let's see what you remember." Emily hesitated, not because she was nervous, but because she had 20 minutes before the floor had to be cleaned, and she took her job seriously. Still, something about the board, the feel of the room, made her step forward. She placed her cleaning rag on the cart, sat down, and reset the board with surprising confidence. Her fingers moved over the pieces as if greeting old friends. Nathan watched, now genuinely curious. The maid had composure. That alone was rare in this room, where men with fortunes trembled at his opening move. She played white. Her first move was simple, classic E4, but the way she made it, steady and unflinching, sent a strange shiver through Nathan. He replied without much thought. C5. The Sicilian defense. Aggressive. Testing. Emily's eyes met his across. The board, no smile, no trace of the timid maid, just calm. The room grew quieter, sensing something unexpected unfolding. One move became 3, then 5, and with each, the laughter died. The smirks faded. The rhythm of the game changed. Nathan found himself thinking harder, recalculating, adjusting. She wasn't playing like someone dusting off an old skill. She was playing like someone who saw through him, as if she understood the patterns of his mind, the way he built traps, the false weaknesses he left on purpose, and she dismantled them, not with aggression, but with quiet elegance. Each piece she moved seemed part of a story only she could see. 10 moves in, Nathan sat straighter. His smile was gone. The crowd leaned closer. Who was this girl? Where had she learned this? And why did it feel like she was 2 steps ahead, no matter how he tried to shift the game? Emily didn't notice the room anymore. The weight of their stares, the disbelief in their eyes, it didn't matter. All that existed was the board, the pieces, the patterns, the memories of afternoons spent at a battered kitchen table with her grandfather, who taught her the game because he said it was the best way to teach patience, strategy, and kindness all at once. Nathan moved his queen. A bold play to break her structure. Emily didn't flinch. She countered with a move so clean, so unexpected, that Nathan's breath caught. The crowd gasped. soft, but audible. And in that moment, the balance of the room shifted. The maid wasn't a joke anymore. She wasn't invisible. She was the player who had just outmaneuvered Nathan Hale in front of everyone who thought they knew him, and Nathan felt something he hadn't felt in years. A rush of uncertainty, and beneath it, respect. He didn't know who she was, but he knew this much: this game was no longer his to control. And as the seconds ticked on, and Emily's hand hovered for her next move, Nathan understood that tonight would not end the way he had planned. He would lose. And for the first time in his carefully ordered world, he welcomed it. But what Nathan didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this game wasn't the real story. The real story had started the moment Emily crossed that threshold, and the final move would change everything. The air in the Sterling Chess Club had turned electric, charged with disbelief and curiosity. The maid, no, the woman no one had noticed before tonight, had just placed Nathan Hale in a position no one thought possible. And now, with her fingers resting lightly on the edge of a pawn, she seemed to pause, as if savoring the moment before the next move. The murmurs of the crowd grew softer, as if they were afraid that even the sound of their breathing might break the strange spell that had fallen over the room. Nathan's heart beat faster, though his face showed no sign of it. He studied the board as if it were a map to an unfamiliar place, one where he no longer knew the paths. Every time he tried to predict her, she danced a step ahead, leaving him chasing shadows. He felt the weight of every eye on him. Powerful men, respected scholars, even those who had once feared him, all watching, waiting to see how the champion would handle defeat at the hands of the girl no one had invited to the table. Emily didn't look up. The room had faded for her, as it always did when she played. All she saw was the board, and in it, the lessons she'd learned not from books or tutors, but from life itself. Her grandfather's soft voice echoed in her mind. The key to chess is like the key to life. See beyond the next move. And that was what she did. She saw Nathan's frustration hidden behind his cool expression. She saw the doubt creeping into his eyes. And she saw the way the board offered a path, not just to victory, but to a kind of understanding she couldn't put into words. Her pawn advanced, quietly sealing his fate. Nathan recognized it instantly. The trap was complete. The spectators leaned closer, many of them now on their feet, unable to believe what they were witnessing. A cleaning girl? No. This young woman, this unseen master, had done what none of them could. But Emily didn't gloat. She didn't even smile. She simply sat back, waiting for him to finish the game with grace. Nathan stared at the board for a long moment before tipping his king gently, the universal gesture of surrender. The club fell into stunned silence, broken only by a single, shaky applause that spread slowly, awkwardly, until even the most skeptical found themselves clapping. Nathan stood, offering his hand. His pride burned. Yes, but beneath it was something. Stronger admiration. Emily hesitated before taking it, her fingers warm, steady. For the first time that evening, their eyes truly met. And in that brief moment, Nathan felt as if he'd glimpsed something hidden, a story he didn't yet understand, but desperately wanted to. Who taught you to play like that? He asked, quietly, almost as if the question was meant for himself alone. Emily's gaze softened. My grandfather, she said. He said chess was a way to see how people think. Nathan nodded slowly, still shaken, still intrigued. The crowd began to disperse, some offering polite praise, others too proud to acknowledge what they'd seen. But Nathan stayed rooted, watching as Emily gathered her cleaning supplies, her expression unchanged by victory. She hadn't played for glory, for attention. She'd played because the game mattered. As she turned to go, Nathan spoke again. Play me again. Emily paused, then shook her head gently. You don't need another game, she said, her voice quiet but certain. You need to ask yourself why you're playing. And with that, she pushed her cart toward the far door, leaving Nathan standing, alone beside the board, surrounded by the pieces of his broken certainty. But this was far from the end, because Nathan couldn't forget her. That night, sleep eluded him. He replayed the game over and over, not just the moves, but the way she'd seen through him. He searched for her name, for any sign of her beyond the club, but she was a ghost. In the records, no championship titles, no tournament wins, nothing. Just Emily, the girl who cleaned floors and shattered illusions. Days turned into a week, and Nathan found himself returning to the club night after night, hoping she'd appear again, but she didn't. And the emptiness of the board gnawed at him. He realized it wasn't the loss that haunted him. It was the feeling that for the first time, someone had truly seen him, not as the billionaire's son, not as the champion, but as a man with flaws, with fears, with something missing. Meanwhile, Emily kept to her routine, working 2 jobs, caring for her mother, and trying to forget the night she'd let herself step into the world that wasn't meant for her. But, late at night, when the city was quiet, she thought of Nathan, not with bitterness, but with a strange sense of connection. She wondered if he understood the gift she'd given him. The chance to see himself through new eyes. Neither of them knew that their paths would cross again, not at a chessboard, but in a way that would test their courage, their hearts, and their beliefs about the world. And when it happened, the game they'd started would turn out to be only the beginning of something far greater. a journey that would change both of their lives forever. The next move wasn't on a chessboard at all. It was out there, in the real world, where the stakes were higher than either of them could have imagined. Asterisk, the city of Boston moved on, as it always did. Car horns, hurried footsteps, and the chatter of busy lives filling the streets. But for Nathan, time seemed too slow. Each day that passed since that night felt incomplete, like a chapter left unfinished. The weight of that brief, electrifying encounter with Emily hung over him. He had faced loss before, in tournaments, in business gambles, but this was different. It wasn't about the game. It was about the glimpse he'd been given into a world beyond his own. A world he hadn't bothered to see until it stared him in the eye and asked him to look deeper. Every night, he returned to the club, his eyes flicking toward the doors at every creak of the hinges. Hoping, waiting, the leather chairs felt emptier. The polished boards, once his kingdom, now felt cold beneath his fingers. His friends noticed his distraction, but they said nothing, assuming he'd snap out of it soon enough. But Nathan couldn't. He didn't want to. What haunted him wasn't just the game. It was the question she'd left him with. Why are you playing? He thought of his father, Richard Hale, titan of industry, a man who saw life as a series of conquests to be won, prizes to be claimed. Nathan had learned young that winning earned respect, and respect meant safety in a world eager to devour the weak. But now, for the first time, he wondered if he'd built his life on a hollow foundation. Was he playing for himself? Or for the applause, the approval, the fear in other people's eyes? Emily, meanwhile, kept her head down. She had too much to worry about to think of chess. Her mother's condition was worsening. The hospital bills piled up faster than she could pay them. The weight of it all pressed on her shoulders as she scrubbed floors and emptied trash bins at night, then worked at the small diner by day. But in the quiet moments on the bus ride home, or when she sat at her mother's bedside, her mind drifted back to the board, to the strange connection she'd felt with Nathan. Not because he was rich, or famous, or powerful, but because, for a brief instant, he had looked at her like she mattered. Then, one cold evening, fate moved again. Emily was leaving the hospital, her mother finally asleep after a difficult day. The streetlights flickered to life, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. As she turned the corner toward the bus stop, she nearly collided with someone, a tall figure in a long coat, his hair damp from the misty rain. Nathan, for a heartbeat, neither spoke. The city's noise seemed to fall away, leaving just the two of them standing there, surprise and something deeper reflected in their eyes. I didn't expect to see you here, Emily said at last, her voice cautious but kind. I've been looking for you, Nathan admitted, his tone free of the arrogance she remembered. There was something raw, almost vulnerable, in the way he said it. I didn't know where else to go. Emily frowned, confused. Why? Nathan hesitated. He wasn't used to admitting uncertainty, but this wasn't the club, and she wasn't an opponent. Because I can't stop thinking about that night, about what you said. I thought I understood myself, but I don't, and I think I need help figuring it out. Emily blinked, taken aback by the honesty. She had expected him to move on, to forget her like so many others did. But here he was, standing in the cold, searching for answers. She could have walked away. She had enough burdens, but something in his voice, in his eyes, made her pause. Life isn't a chess game, Nathan, she said softly. You can't strategize your way into meaning. Then how? His words were almost a plea. How do you do it? Emily glanced down the street at the glowing bus sign, then back at him. You start by listening, really listening. To people you don't usually hear, to yourself, and to the world outside your circles. Nathan nodded slowly. Teach me. It wasn't what she'd expected, but it was sincere. She sighed, not out of frustration, but out of the heavy understanding that this was the beginning of something neither of them could have foreseen. Okay, she said finally, but not as a game, not as a challenge. You'd have to mean it. I do, he said. And for the first time in a long while, Nathan Hale felt the truth of his own words. That night marked the start of a journey neither of them had planned. Nathan began to see the city through Emily's eyes. The worn-out shelters, the quiet strength of single mothers, balancing jobs and children, the kindness shared between strangers who had nothing to give but themselves. He volunteered at shelters. He donated not with fanfare, but with humility. And as he gave, he received something back, a sense of purpose that no victory on the chessboard had ever brought him. And Emily, despite her initial reluctance, found herself opening up. She shared her story, her struggles, and her hopes. Slowly, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to carry her burdens alone. But the city had more lessons in store. A crisis was coming, one that would test everything they'd learned and force them to make choices that would shape their futures. And when it came, the final move would belong to both of them, not on a chessboard, but in life itself. Asterisk, the storm came quietly at first, like all storms do. A slow build of tension in the air, the kind you don't notice until it's too late. Nathan had found comfort in his new rhythm meeting Emily after her shifts. Walking through neighborhoods he'd once sped past without a glance, listening more than he spoke. For the first time, his world felt real, not just a polished stage, set for success and applause. and Emily found herself caught between gratitude and fear. Gratitude for Nathan's unexpected kindness. Fear that it was too fragile, that life would find a way to tear it apart. That night began like any other. A chill wind swept through Boston's streets, scattering dry leaves across the sidewalks. Nathan waited outside the diner where Emily worked her second job, hands deep in his coat pockets, watching his breath mist in the cold. He didn't mind the wait. It gave him time to think, to remember how much he'd changed since the night she beat him at chess. How much she'd changed him. But as the minutes ticked by, unease stirred. The usual hum of city life felt different, heavier somehow. And when Emily finally emerged, her face told him what he hadn't wanted to imagine. "I need your help," she said, her voice tight, eyes shining with unshed tears. "It's my mom," the hospital called. "There's been a complication. They need a decision, and I don't know what to do." Nathan didn't hesitate. He took her hand, warm and steady. "Come on, let's go." They ran through the streets, flagged down a cab, and in minutes they were at the hospital. The sterile corridors smelled of antiseptic and worry. Nurses moved briskly. Doctors spoke in hushed tones, and the world felt too big, too cold. Emily clutched the straps of her worn backpack as if it were a lifeline. Nathan stayed close, his presence a silent promise that she wasn't alone. The doctor explained the situation, words like surgery, risk, no guarantees tumbled out in careful phrases. Emily's heart pounded. She looked at Nathan, searching his face for answers. But this wasn't chess. There was no perfect move, no strategy that guaranteed victory. "What would you do?" she whispered, tears threatening now. Nathan swallowed hard. He wanted to say the right thing. But what was the right thing? "I'd listen to my heart," he said finally. "And I'd trust that whatever choice you make, it's made with love. That's what matters." And so, with trembling hands, Emily signed the form. The surgery began, and they waited hours that felt like lifetimes. Sitting side by side in the dim waiting room, the hum of vending machines, the only sound. Nathan watched her as she fought, back fear her strength humbling him. And in that quiet, he realized something that shook him to his core. This wasn't about repayment for a lost game. This wasn't about charity. This was about her. He cared deeply, more than he'd ever thought possible. When dawn broke over the city, the surgeon emerged at last. The news was good. Her mother had made it through. The relief hit Emily so hard she nearly collapsed, and Nathan caught her before she fell. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not titles, not wealth, not the expectations of a world that had always told him what he should be. Days turned into weeks. Nathan stayed by Emily's side, helping where he could, never overstepping, always listening. He learned the names of the nurses. He brought food, blankets, anything to make the long hospital nights a little easier. And in the quiet spaces between worry and hope, their bond deepened, not through grand gestures, but through shared silences, small kindnesses, and the steady rhythm of two hearts learning to beat together. But life wasn't finished testing them. One afternoon, as Emily's mother finally began to recover, Nathan received a call that pulled him back into his old world. His father's company was in crisis, a scandal threatening to destroy the family name, their business empire crumbling under the weight of secrets and lies. Richard Hale demanded Nathan return to take charge, to fix what had been broken. Nathan stood at a crossroads. The boy he'd been would have rushed to his father's side, eager to prove himself, to win back respect. But now he saw the cost of that world more clearly than ever. And he saw Emily, who had taught him the value of quiet courage, of kindness without condition. "I have to go," he told her, regret thick in his voice. "But I don't want to lose this, lose you." Emily touched his arm, her eyes steady. "Then don't. Do what you need to do. But remember what matters." And so he went. Back into the world of boardrooms and backstabbing, of headlines and high-stakes deals. But this time, he carried Emily's lessons with him. He fought not for pride, not for power, but for honesty, for fairness, for a chance to make things right. And every night, when the day's battles were done, he thought of her, of the girl who had once been invisible to him, and who now filled every corner of his heart. What neither of them knew was that the choices they were making, miles apart, were setting the stage for the greatest test yet, one that would challenge their faith in each other, in themselves, and in the future they hadn't even dared to dream. The sky over Boston seemed heavier that day, as if the city itself sensed what was coming. Nathan stood at the window of his father's office tower, looking out over streets that once felt like his kingdom. The crisis had swallowed him whole. Every call was urgent, every meeting a battle. The scandal had exposed everything the Hales had worked to hide: shady deals, broken promises, decisions made without conscience. And now, Nathan was expected to clean up the mess. His father had retreated behind closed doors, leaving Nathan to face the storm alone. But Nathan no longer wanted to play by their rules. The nights he'd spent beside Emily at the hospital, listening to her speak of resilience, of integrity, had changed him. He couldn't go back to who he'd been. But standing here now, with the weight of an empire pressing on his shoulders, he wondered if he was strong enough to be someone new. Far from the steel and glass of that world, Emily was learning to breathe again. Her mother was healing, slowly gaining strength, and for the first time in months, Emily allowed herself to hope. The fear that had gripped her so tightly began to loosen its hold. But with hope came another fear, that Nathan, swept up in the chaos of his old life, might forget the promises they'd made in whispered conversations and quiet looks. She wanted to believe in him, but she'd been let down before, and the scars of those disappointments made it hard to trust in happy endings. Weeks passed, and though Nathan called when he could, the distance between them felt wider with each day. His voice, once warm and certain, now carried the edge of exhaustion. Emily understood, but it didn't stop the ache. She threw herself into work, into caring for her mother, into finding small ways to brighten the days, a vase of fresh flowers on the windowsill, a book read aloud to pass the long afternoons. But at night, when the world was quiet, she couldn't stop the questions that filled her mind. Would he come back? Would he remember what they'd started to build? Or would he be swallowed by the world he'd tried to leave behind? Then came the letter, delivered by hand, on heavy paper bearing the Hale family crest. It wasn't from Nathan. It was from Richard Hale. The words were polished, formal, but the message was clear. Stay away. Emily's presence in Nathan's life, the letter claimed, was a distraction, a risk. The Hales were fighting to survive, and there was no room for sentiment. No space for a girl who didn't belong in their world. Emily read it twice, the sting of the words cutting deeper each time. She could have ignored it, could have waited for Nathan to call, to explain, to make it right. But pride and pain kept her from reaching out. If he wanted to fight for them, he would. And if he didn't, well, she'd survived disappointment before. Nathan never knew about the letter. He worked through endless nights, trying to fix what his father had broken. He made hard choices, told hard truths, refused to cover up what couldn't be justified. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The company's name began to heal, not through deceit, but through honesty. And when the dust began to settle, when the crisis was no longer a daily fire to put out, he did what he'd longed to do. He reached for his phone, ready to call Emily, ready to go to her and show her that he hadn't forgotten. But Emily was gone. Her mother, stronger now, had been offered a chance to move to a small town where a friend had arranged a job and a fresh start. Emily, thinking Nathan had chosen his world over hers, had gone with her. No forwarding address. Note, just gone. Nathan felt the loss like a blow. He searched, he called, but it was as if she'd vanished. The girl who'd taught him to see beyond himself, who had opened his eyes and heart, had slipped from his life before he could show her what she meant to him. But Nathan Hale had changed too much to give up. The boy who once played chess for victory now lived for something greater. And as he stood once more at the window of his father's office, looking out at the city that had given him everything and taught him what really mattered, he made a silent vow. He would find her, not to win, not to conquer, but to show her that love, real love, didn't run when the game got hard, that it stayed, it fought, it believed. The search would not be easy, the path would not be straight, but Nathan was ready. And somewhere, miles away, Emily stood beneath the wide sky of her new home, wondering if he'd remember, if he'd care, if the man she'd once seen behind the polished mask was still out there, looking for her. The game was no longer about kings and queens, pawns and rooks. It was about two hearts, searching for the final move that would bring them home. The wind that swept through Boston the night Nathan left to find her felt like a beginning. Like the first move in a game that would finally mean something. He didn't care about the company anymore. Didn't care about the headlines that once praised or condemned him in equal measure. He cared only about keeping his promise to himself. To her, he would find Emily, not to explain, not to make excuses, but to show her that what they'd shared was real, that she had been right about him all along. The boy who'd once played for applause was gone. What remained was a man who finally knew what mattered. He started with what little he had. The hospital records, the diner where she used to work, the shelter she sometimes volunteered at. Faces blurred by time tried to help, but no one knew where she'd gone. Still, Nathan didn't stop. Day after day, city after city, he followed whispers and fragments. Someone had seen her on a bus headed west. Someone else mentioned a woman who matched her description helping at a community kitchen in a small town. Every lead, no matter how small, was a thread he refused to let slip from his grasp. Meanwhile, Emily built a quiet life in the town that had taken her and her mother in. The town was small, the kind where everyone knew everyone, where kindness mattered more than wealth. She worked at a local library, ran chess nights for children at the community center, and helped her mother tend a tiny garden behind their rented cottage. She told herself she was content, that what she and Nathan had shared was a beautiful moment, but one that belonged to a different world. Still, on clear nights, she found herself standing at the edge of the lake, looking out at the stars, wondering if he remembered, wondering if she'd done the right thing by leaving. Nathan's search led him to that very town on a late spring afternoon, the kind of day when the air smells of new beginnings and the world feels full of promise. He'd almost given up that morning, sitting in a roadside diner with a map spread before him and nothing but empty leads marked in ink. But an old man at the counter noticed his frustration and, after a bit of conversation, mentioned a young woman who sounded familiar. Eyes, always helping the kids with chess, Moved here with her mother about a year ago. Nathan's heart raced as he followed the man's directions, driving past open fields and small houses until he reached the community center. The laughter of children spilled through the open windows, and through the glass, he saw her, Emily, sitting at a chessboard, showing a little boy how to think ahead, how to believe in himself. She hadn't changed. Not really. The same quiet strength, the same grace. The sight of her, so near and yet still feeling like a dream, made his breath catch. He stepped inside, the wooden floor creaking softly beneath his feet. Emily glanced up at the sound, expecting to see one of the other volunteers, but instead, she saw him. For a moment, the world fell away to children's laughter, the sunlight streaming through the windows, the gentle breeze. All she saw was Nathan, standing there, his eyes filled with everything she'd hoped for and feared she'd never see again. Neither spoke at first. It was enough just to look, to feel the truth of what they'd both carried in their hearts during the long, silent months apart. Finally, Nathan crossed the room, stopping just a breath away. His voice, when it came, was steady but full of emotion. "I looked for you," he said, "everywhere. I didn't stop." Emily blinked back tears she hadn't expected. "Why? Because I couldn't leave it like that. Because I should have come sooner. Because I needed you to know. You weren't a distraction. You weren't a risk. You were the only real thing in my life, and I don't want to live without you." The children watched, sensing the importance of the moment without understanding the words. The little boy at the chessboard nudged a piece forward, breaking the stillness. Emily glanced down, then back at Nathan, and smiled through her tears. "You've changed," she whispered. "You changed me," he said simply. "And I want to spend every day proving I deserved it." There were no grand speeches, no dramatic gestures. Just the truth, raw and real, shared between two people who had found their way back to each other not through games or strategies, but through honesty, courage, and love. From that day, Nathan stayed. He made a home in the town, not as a billionaire's son or a fallen chess champion, but as a man learning every day how to be better. Together, he and Emily built a life filled with small joys, teaching chess, helping others, finding wonder in the simple things. And though the world they'd come from tried to pull them back, they stood firm, knowing they had already found their greatest victory, because the final move, it turned out, wasn't checkmate at all. It was choosing love, and in that, they both won.